Let's talk about that wall, the one you've built around yourself, brick by silent brick, the one that makes you feel self-sufficient, untouchable, safe. Today, we're going deep into the psychology of those emotional walls. We're going to explore why the very fortress you designed to protect you might have just become your own silent prison. And we have to start right here, because this is the fundamental truth. An emotional wall is never a character flaw. It's a scar. It's a monument to something you survived. A split-second decision your mind made when it felt threatened or cornered or so deeply hurt it had no other choice. It's a survival mechanism, born from a desperate need to feel safe again. You know, most people think emotional walls are a sign of strength, a kind of fortress to keep the chaos of the world out. And for a while, that's exactly what they are. They do their job. But psychology says something much darker. The psychological truth is that the very walls that once saved you are now slowly, quietly, destroying you from the inside. And that brings us to the central, chilling question of this entire explainer. We build these defenses to protect ourselves from being hurt again, right? To shield ourselves from the dangers of the world. But what if the greatest danger was never out there at all? What if, in your haste to lock the gates, you accidentally trapped the real monster inside with you? Hold on to that thought. We will come back to it. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with how these walls even get built in the first place. Then we'll look at the psychological pattern that forms the blueprint. We'll see how they can actually become part of who you are, your very identity. Then we'll uncover a shocking truth about their real purpose. And finally, explore the choice you have in front of you. All right, let's go back to the beginning. Section 1, the survival mechanism. At some point in your life, something happened. Something hurt you badly enough that your subconscious mind drew a hard line in the sand. It made a vow, a promise to itself, never again. This wasn't a moment of weakness, far from it. It was a moment of profound, almost primal, protective decision-making. And to enforce that never again rule, your mind got to work. It built a fortress, it raised the drawbridge, and it took that original searing pain and locked it away in a chest so you wouldn't have to feel it every single day. And you know what? It worked. You survived. But here's the crucial point, the fine print nobody talks about. When you lock away pain, you don't get to be selective. You can't just numb the bad stuff. In that same chest, you also lock away your capacity for real joy, for spontaneity, for genuine human connection. So what are these walls actually made of? Well, they're built brick by brick from very specific kinds of wounds. Every time your feelings were dismissed when you were young, maybe you were told to get over it, that's a brick. A friend who betrayed your trust when you were vulnerable, that's another brick. A painful relationship that made you feel foolish for ever caring in the first place, that's a whole new layer right there. Each wound is another brick, making the structure higher, thicker, stronger. Now, this pattern of building walls, it isn't random. It's not a coincidence. It often comes from a deep psychological blueprint that's laid down very early in our lives. Psychologists have a name for this. They call it a specific attachment style. The specific term is avoidant attachment. And you can think of it like this. It's a pattern that gets wired into our operating system, usually when we're very, very young. If a child learns over and over again that reaching out for comfort or help leads to being ignored or maybe even punished or dismissed, their brain learns a simple, brutal lesson. Needing other people equals pain. So the logical solution it comes up with is to simply stop needing people. And this right here perfectly illustrates the result of that programming. On the outside, a person with this blueprint often looks like the absolute picture of strength. They're independent, composed, unflappable, nothing gets to them. But inside, it is a completely different story. It's like a bird in a beautiful gilded cage. There's a profound, deep, and often completely unacknowledged loneliness. And here is the truly insidious part of the trap. This is what makes it so hard to see. After a while, you don't even register it as loneliness anymore. It just becomes your baseline, your normal. It's just a quiet, low-level, constant hum of emptiness or numbness that you simply accept as the way things are. The absence of deep feeling becomes your everyday reality. This is where the whole thing takes a really dangerous turn, because the walls stops being a defense mechanism you use, and it starts becoming the person you believe you are. That phrase, "I don't need anyone," it stops being a coping strategy, and it becomes a core identity trait. It becomes who you are. And when your entire identity is built on this idea of self-sufficiency, any threat to that identity feels catastrophic. This quote from the source material just captures it perfectly. For someone behind the wall, being vulnerable isn't just uncomfortable, it feels identical to being stupid. Trusting another person isn't a leap of faith. It feels like you're actively handing them a loaded weapon pointed right at you. So what happens when someone gets too close, when they start to see the real you? You push them away. And it's often not even a conscious or cruel act. It's a reflex, an automatic response. You create distance, you might go cold, you find reasons, any reason, to end things. Your wall is just doing the job it was so perfectly designed and trained for, neutralizing any and all threats to your emotional safety. It's a form of self-sabotage that feels exactly like self-preservation. The long-term cost of living behind this wall, well, it has a name. Psychologists call it emotional numbness, and it is the high, high price you pay for absolute safety. It's true, you successfully numb the sharp, stabbing lows of betrayal or pain, but the cost? The cost is that you also lose access to the soaring highs of joy, of true connection, of love. Everything just flattens out. You end up living your life in grayscale, always on the surface. And this is perhaps the most profound and heartbreaking cost of all. This isn't about an active sadness or grieving for something that you lost. It's actually worse than that. It is a slow, creeping forgetting. You begin to lose touch with what deep connection even feels like. You slowly start to forget the very thing you're missing out on. The loneliness becomes so total, you forget it even has a name. Okay, everything we've discussed up to this point is how we typically understand these walls. It's a standard psychological model. But now, we've arrived at the part that reframes the entire picture. This is the shocking truth. This is what nobody tells you about what your wall is actually doing. Here it is. This is the twist. We think the wall is facing outward, right? A shield to protect us from other people, from the world, but its primary function is actually facing inward. It's there to keep you from having to look at, to touch, or to re-experience the original wound that forced you to build it in the first place. So let's go back to that question from the very beginning. Remember, is the real danger on the outside, or has it been trapped inside with you this whole time? And now the answer is crystal clear. The danger was inside all along. The wall isn't a fortress, it's a quarantine zone. It was designed to keep your own unresolved trauma contained and separated from your conscious, everyday life. You see, understanding this changes everything. Because if the wall's real job is to contain your own pain, then the path forward isn't about fighting the world, it's about healing what's inside. So the big question is, can the wall actually come down? Yes, it can, but not with a sledgehammer. You can't just tear it down. It comes down brick by brick. First, it starts by recognizing that the intense fear of vulnerability you feel, it's a memory, it's old data. Second, it's about finding genuinely safe people, people who prove over time that they won't use your openness against you. Psychologists call this earned security. It's not about blind faith, it's about a trust that is built slowly, deliberately, and is proven over and over. And finally, it's about making a conscious choice to try the key in the gate again. And if you feel that ache of loneliness, I want you to reframe it. Don't see it as a weakness. See it for what it truly is, a sign of life. It is proof positive that the part of you that craves connection is still alive and well behind that wall. It's the part of you that wants to come home to yourself and home to others. And it is so important to remember this. Building that wall was not a mistake. It was a brilliant, intelligent strategy that kept you safe when you absolutely needed it most. So the goal here isn't to condemn the wall or to hate it. It's to thank it for its service and to gently help it understand that you are not in that dangerous place anymore. You just don't need it in the same way. So it all comes down to this one question. The real question isn't whether you can let people in, it's whether you're willing to. Are you willing to take the risk, to feel the fear, and to stop protecting yourself from the connection, the joy, and the very life you secretly and perhaps desperately want to live? That's a question that only you can answer.